On the afternoon of the 3rd of August 1987, I jumped out of a taxi right here and proceeded to walk over the road and down Soi Sri Bamphen, where I was going to look for Freddys guest house too.
Hey Mr. นักร้องเพลงเพราะอะไรมาเมืองไทยทำไมมาพักที่มาเลเซียโฮเทล
And this is the legendary Malaysia Hotel. I believe it was built sometime in the late 60s, and a lot of its business was accommodating US troops out here on R&R. It was also used for a couple of scenes in the movie Good Morning Vietnam, and I believe Robin Williams, the main actor, actually stayed here while they were filming it. As we walked out of the Malaysia Hotel, opposite me was the Blue Fox Bar, one of the original GI bars. And the 7-Eleven behind me now used to be the Blue Fox, which was a bar set up for the US troops when they were posted here during the Vietnam War. And it hadn't really changed much when I used to hang around here, late 80s, early 90s. Now going back 30 years ago, this was the original entrance to the Blue Fox Bar. Now the term legendary is used too often in Thailand, but this place was legendary. It was the original GI's bar. It was a bit dark, plain and dingy inside. It had two jukeboxes, one at that end, one at this end. Now the jukeboxes just contained the original records from the Vietnam War era. So if you put on Stairway to Heaven, the record was so worn that you'd hear more crackles than you would music. It sold simple food, beers, Coca-Colas, lots of ladies hanging around. A lot of the expats who used to live in this area used to hang around here, as well as the tourists. Now when this place closed and became a 7-Eleven, for me that was the start of the whole atmosphere of the area changing, you know. But from my perspective, probably not for the better, you know. I preferred it the way it was. It's one place I really miss. You know, I'd love to be able to go out and have another night at the Blue Fox. We walked down the Soi, and I remember my first feeling was the heat and humidity, and also the smells. You know, the smells tend to carry a bit further in hot and humid climates. I remember that. I remember walking down here and seeing a couple of mangy-looking old dogs. So across the road, gave them a wide berth as I carried on walking down the Soi. Well, this restaurant has been here forever. It used to be like good old, really quick, efficient and cheap. My Al-Hab open. Oh, now here we are at Wongs Place. I don't think it's been painted since the 80s, has it? And this is Wong's Place, and I don't think it's been cleaned since the 80s. We used to have a lot of fun here. I used to like coming here. Wong, it was a kind of a Chinese Thai. He used to have an intercom system to order the food, you know, so you'd look in the menu, you'd find whatever meal that you wanted to order, and then you tell him and he'd press the intercom and bark his orders upstairs. The other thing I really remember about him was he'd zero in on your accent, where you were from, you know. And I think, you know, the first few times I met him, I was sort of thinking, he sounds like he's got a bit of a London accent, you know. I wonder what that's about. And then, of course, I saw him like when he was with Australians, he had an Australian accent, and when he was with the Americans, he had an American accent. He was very adaptable. I also remember it was the first place in this area that did pizza. So we used to come down here just for that. I mean, it wasn't that good, but it was pizza. He had a fantastic collection of rock VHS tapes. You know, there was loads of stuff I saw here for the first time. That was really cool. And the other thing he used to do that made me laugh was he'd just get bored with the jukebox after a while, and he'd just pull out his guitar and and start singing, you know. I don't think it was very good really, but it was, you know, it was nice and chill late night. It was a cool atmosphere. Now, about 1991, they did some major roadworks on this Soi. The original road level used to be here, right where it is here, and they raised it 5 or 6 inches. And when they first laid the concrete, they cordoned the area off, and myself and my friend Mike had been drinking at the Malaysia Hotel, and we were walking back along here, and for some reason Mike decided to jump over the cordon and through the wet concrete, and he just ran through it, making a total mess of it. Now all the workers were watching, and they started chasing us down this Soi, and we ran all the way down to Freddys guest house, and luckily we just made it. We got inside the foyer, we got the metal gates closed and got the padlock on just before they arrived. And of course, as soon as Mike realised he was safe because the padlock was on, he was getting all cocky and he was giving them all kinds of finger gestures. But it was, you know, it was a bad thing to do, and that was typical of Mike. You know, when he got drunk, he just used to get himself in so many situations. And just round the corner from Wongs Place is Home Sweet Home Guest House, which was a place I stayed for quite a few months in 1990 and 1991. Still looks exactly the same as it did back then. Let's have a look. I don't know if it's closed business or not. It looks like it's shut up business. This is where we stayed. I remember this yard used to be open and used to go you used to go up them stairs to the rooms. I remember last time I come here in 2018, there was a lady here who used to run it, you know, it was still running. Now, over 30 years ago, this was the restaurant area of Home Sweet Home Guest House. And I stayed here for quite a few months that year. And I remember at one point we had some African people turn up. I think most of them were from Nigeria, and they were all called Omar, and they were very suspicious because they'd never go out, you know, they'd just sit in the restaurant behind me, and they'd spend a lot of time like leaning up against this corner wall that's behind me now. And because they were behaving so suspiciously, that the police got interested, and the police were quite sort of blatant. They'd come in here and eat and drink, and it was pretty obvious they were keeping an eye on things. I remember one day I was talking to one of these African guys. For some reason they were all called Omar, and I was chatting with one of the Omars on this corner behind me, and the police were watching. And what happened was that eventually, like, we stopped talking and Omar drifted off, and these police were straight onto me, you know. Why were you talking to him? Do you know him? How do you know him? And so I knew from then that they had a close eye on them, and they had good reason to. I mean, they were up to no good. They were just basically waiting to go on runs, you know. They'd go on runs to Japan or, you know, Taiwan were two of the common places. And they just hang around with no money for a month or two, and then all of a sudden they disappear. A week later they might reappear or not. You know, I seem to remember that time the authorities were catching on to it, and you used to read every week about people being caught at the airport, at Don Mueang Airport. So some of them would disappear, some of them would get caught. And it was like that down here, you know. It was where all the scammers hung out, you know, virtually every evening in Freddys guest house too, or Lee guest house, or behind me here, Home Sweet Home, or the Blue Fox. You'd get them all meeting and discussing their scams, you know, things like traveller's check scams, credit cards scams where they send people out shopping with stolen credit cards, gold scams where they smuggle gold into different countries, immigration scams where they take ladies to different countries like Australia and Japan. And, you know, not all of these people who were doing it were African. That was just like one incident I related. There were a lot of young Western guys used to do it. And you used to see them, you know, they'd be one week, they'd be sitting having a beer, and they'd make a small bottle of Singer last an hour. And then they'd disappear for a week, and then it would be party time and a dolly bird on each arm, you know, obviously been on a successful run. I can remember one of my friends saying to me, you know, Carl, I've been offered this run to go to Japan, and I said to him, Dave, I said, what's it worth? What does it pay? And he said, oh, 40,000 baht, which in those days was like £1,000. I said, Dave, you know, if you got caught just for that much, for £1,000, you know, you'd say to your parents, you tell your parents, and what would they say to you? He said, yeah, I know, yeah, if we'd have known you needed £1,000 that badly. I said, yes, Dave, but he did it anyway, you know, he got away with it, but he did it anyway. As we walk past this section, I recognised the Boston Inn, which was right here, now demolished. Now the Boston Inn was in a terrible state. I mean, even in 1987, it was old and decrepit. As I carried on down here past what used to be my place. Now this place behind me now used to be called My Place, and a couple of my friends used to stay here. And one of my strongest memories is that I used to have a jukebox, and this is the first place I can ever remember hearing Hotel California. I mean, the Eagles were never as big in the UK as they were in America, and I've just got no recollection of hearing it before that date, but I've got very clear recollections of hearing it played hundreds of times here.
Hey Mr. นักร้องเพลงเพราะอะไรมาเมืองไทย
This alley behind me, you might be able to see the sign saying Ken's Place. Used to be the haunt of two local characters called Patsy and Kenny, and they were both really gay, and they used to run this kind of like film agency thing where they used to sort of invite young travellers to have bit roles in films. And I think they did a bit for Good Morning Vietnam, and I can remember they offered me a part in Air America. I would have had to go up to Mae Hong Son, but I turned it down. I think there was some kind of a casting couch thing going on. I didn't want to find out. I heard unfortunately Patsy died a few years ago, you know. It's been years and years since I've seen either of them, you know. It must be 30 years since I've seen either of them. But all I remember is like Patsy would always have this big, what we call, you know, didn't call it a bum bag, you know, a belt bag on full of cash. And he was always talking about race horses in Karat, and Kenny was more just sort of like interested in any pretty boys who happened to be in town, you know. We come past the Soi Sri Bamphen apartments, which was full of many ladies and long-term residents of the area. Now this area was the original travellers area in Bangkok before Khao San Road, and it always had a kind of naughtier atmosphere to it. Wow, that Hairdressers is still there. I remember myself and my mate Jeff used to go in there for a good old cutthroat razor shave. And just off of the main Soi Sri Bamphen is a little alleyway on the right here that was the home to quite a few guest houses. And this is Madam Guest House, one of the original guest houses in the area. And about 1990, 91, my good friend Mike used to live here. He used to live in a room right there. Well, I call it a room, it was more like a rabbit hutch. It was just kind of this, made of this kind of wooden stuff, this plywood. And you couldn't even stand up in it. It was a room for a single bed and enough room to sort of stash a couple of bags, and that was it. And he used to like go out and meet ladies, and he'd tell them to come back to his room. He'd tell them, and they said, "Where do you stay?" And he used to say, "Oriental Hotel," you know, which was in those days was like the best hotel in the world. And he used to bring them back here to his rabbit hutch.
ทำไมมาพักที่มาเลเซียโฮเทล
And this place behind me now at the ND Alleyway used to be Lee 4 Guest House, and it was like, it was quite a new kid on the block, you know. I think he turned up in the early 90s, and You used to have a good little meeting area on the roof, you know. We used to go up there and have a few drinks, and all the characters used to meet. And this was one of the places where the scammers used to meet, you know, just behind them gates. Behind me there, they used to have a couple of tables, and one of the characters who turned up in the kind of like mid to late 90s, early 2000s, was a guy called Nigel. And he was always like in these shorts, and he'd wherever you were, you know, be it Freddys guest house or here, he'd come in and order a bottle of Singer. And I could just remember sitting on a table behind where I am now, and Nigel turned up, and we got talking to him, and he said, oh yeah, he was going to be it was at the start of the kind of internet, so it was around about like the turn of the century, and he said he was setting up this internet video business, you know. Sounded a bit shifty, and we just, I remember after he'd gone, myself and my friend Bill just sort of like looked, oh yeah, he's full of it, he's full of shit. But he wasn't, he did it, he formed a very kind of infamous website called Street Something Asia, and this was our destination, Freddys Guest House 2. The Freddys Guest House was, it was clean but cheap and well run, and it just had a real assortment of characters there. There were a lot of people there who just kind of took out rooms a long time because they made because they liked the place. They used to have a really cool restaurant area downstairs, you know. They used to have a nice little lounge area with a TV and a VHS player and a collection of tapes, you know, like Rambo movies that you could watch. Strange, it just looks so different now. Right, this is the site of Freddys Guest House 2, and this lady has told me that the rooms are still here and I can come through and have a look. So this is the first time I've come in here for 25 years. Yeah, remember this area? Sakooning, don't mate. Before this was the restaurant area. This was where all the scammers used to sit on the table here and make their plans. The counter. Wow. Incredible seeing the place. I remember my friend Bill used to stay up this bit. No lighting, but right. I can remember room 4. I can remember staying in room 4 once, and I got very ill. I can remember it was very hot and sweaty. Mm-hmm. เมื่อก่อนนะผมเคยพักห้องนี้
เหรอคะ
ใช่ครับ
ห้องนี้เมื่อก่อนเป็นห้องแอร์คอนดิชั่น
อ๋อใช่ Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember I used to quite often you'd hear 2Ks. Yeah, I don't think you hear them too much.
มันโควิดก็เลยยังไม่ได้ทำความสะอาด
Oh, เขามาเป็นไรครับ And this leads to the terrace. This used to be the Freddys Guest House terrace. Had many a good drinking session up here. Used to be my friend's room, Jeff and Duan. I'm going to see if I can gain access to the room where I spent the most amount of time, where I literally lived for a couple of years. Through here, up the stairs, it might be like a there's a little toilet and came on here. Yeah. And these used to be Oh, don't need me on you. Oh, okay. Well, my room, I can't actually look in my room because I've been told there's a customer in there, but it's still the same sign, everything. While I'm here, I'll tell a brief story. Once I was staying in this room with Tom, and we had our own TV. and video recorder that I bought. And what happened was one night, one of my friends turned up, Harley turned up from America, and he had yeah, my friend Harley turned up from America, and he had with him some mezcal, you know, like tequila with a worm in it, from Mexico, and we all got rat-assed. And I can remember being in this room, and I was drunk, and of course the bathrooms are opposite, as you can see here, you know, they're not en suite. So what I did was I grabbed the toiletries and I went over to this room to have a shower, but it was locked. So I went up these stairs, I went up here, I went into this toilet here. And then the next thing I remember is just kind of like waking up and looking down towards the front of the room, and the TV and video weren't there. And I thought somebody had come in and stolen it, you know? So I turned around to say to Tom, look, where's the TV and video? And then I looked, and there was this big German woman laying next to me. I recognised she was from the room upstairs. So what I'd done, I was so drunk, the bathroom downstairs wasn't free, so I'd come up to this bathroom here, had a shower here, and then just walked across, forgetting to go down the floor. So I walked into this girl's room. Why she didn't go and get the manager, I don't know. But I woke up totally naked there. And then I grabbed the towel, which happened to be hers, and I rushed down to the proper room, and of course, Tom wasn't talking to me. And she just said to me, why did you spend all night upstairs with Jeff and Duan, who live here? They just assumed that I'd spent all night in this room with my two friends. And so I told her the truth. I knew she'd find out. So I told her the truth. Of course, she was really angry. And the next morning, at breakfast, she saw this German lady, and she knew this German lady, big lady, you know, she wasn't my type. So she kind of forgave me and never talked about it again. Well, it's been nice to come back and look and see everything again. But on the other hand, it's been a bit sad, to be honest, because this place used to be so full of life all through the day, all through the night, just characters everywhere. And there's just, whenever I walk here, you know, I've got some memories attached to it. So it's just kind of like, there's just too many ghosts here for me, you know. I think the present is kind of spoiled by my memories of the past.
Hey Mr. นักร้องเพลงเพราะอะไรมาเมืองไทยทำไมมาพักที่มาเลเซียโฮเทล